You hear me okay there? There, yes, awesome. So, hi everyone, this is an afternoon session and probably you have other things to do as well. So I really, really appreciate you being here. This session is the future of collection development, and is it a fire ant or an accordion? If you're in the wrong place, decide now. If you're into it, stick around. We're going to divide the group into two groups. One, the fire ants group, is going to be on the left side, and the accordions are going to be on the right. No. So I'll start from who am I? You know, why am I talking about this? I'm the Associate University Librarian at Brown for Access Services and Collection Management. It's a job that I do very energetically. I love working there, but also, you know, besides buying stuff and negotiating stuff, I manage people. So we have right now a group of 60-something people that, you know, are working in that department. And as I go about my biography, because it will be a little important, I want to explain also that all the things I'm saying are coming from a management position as well, thinking about the staff that do the collection management, the people that do support for collections, and beside, you know, thinking about how do we strategically align ourselves and all those other cool things that we're busy doing. So I came to Cornell in 2002. I was born in Tel Aviv, Israel, and then, you know, moved to Ithaca and started a career in tech services. So lots of the work I do had to do with automation and finding efficiencies in many ways, but also working on collection development. I was a philosophy selector at Cornell for quite a while. And in the end of the time, after 13 years or so, there were a few things that I already worked on, but I want to talk a little bit about them because they're a continuation of the work that I'm busy doing now. You may know that there used to be a system. Do you still hear me okay? No. What happened? What about now? Yeah? Okay. That's weird. There used to be a system at Cornell that was developed there called It's So Cool. It became WorldCat Selection. That was the brainchild of Scott Wicks that now works at Harvard. And the idea was to send slips to selectors in one unified system. Basically, all the selectors that select in Harasowitz, Casalini, Gobi, Oasis, you go to one place, you pick up the slips that are of new titles, and then you make it all work. That system is gone, but at that time, it felt like a very efficient way to go about collection development. OCLC bought actually that system. And one thing that happened, you know, as the head of acquisitions at the time, half of our stuff went automatically through that system. The other half was the very manual work. Slips, I want you to buy this, an email. And so in between having a very automated workflow and having a very manual workflow, something had to happen. And we developed a tool while I was still there called Poof, the pre-ordering online form. And there were really good reasons why we did that. The first one is because we wanted to capture all those one-offs, you know, that were just sent to us to process. And the other one is because Cornell worked with Columbia on a project called Too Cool that you may know about. And the idea was to have a deep collaborative work, technical services, collaborative collections, and things like that. The thing is that we didn't have data to allow us to know what the other partner is selecting. So if you have, you know, selectors working across institutions, you want to know that Kaiser Walker sitting here, German study selector, and other things, selected something for Cornell. if you're working at Columbia, you may want to avoid selecting the same item, or you may want to still purchase it, no matter what. So that led to that tool called Poof, which is still working, and basically what people do is to select the partner institution that they want to work with. Doesn't need to be Cornell and Columbia, it can be any other partner, and what it does, it queries OCLC and shows holdings so you know if the other partner selected something. What happened on the back end is that the metadata that was queried from OCLC translated into automated routines for purchasing, for acquisitions. So we had win-win. We had collections that were readily available and you knew what data is there, what other partners are selecting. And there was a win on the tech services side because there was all of this automation happening on the other end. Poof is still operational, which is great, but it's only for Cornell and Columbia. So now I'm at Brown and I want to do the same thing. I want to partner with other institutions. I want to know what they're purchasing. I want to respect the intellectual work that the selectors in my own institutions are busy doing. And we don't have a way to do that yet. So this is also a call for you all to begin to think about it, how we do such things together. But okay, this is kind of the Cornell time. Then I went to OCLC for 2 years and I spent some time doing product management for a tool called, a system called ISNI, the International Standard Name Identifier. You may know about it. It's all kids are part of ISNIs, right? What is cool about that, and I've spent some time there and then I went back to the US doing other things, is that it has quality assurance team, a group of libraries that do quality assurance to the metadata that goes into that system. The system is hosted in OCLC. We get metadata coming from many different sources, and the team in the British Library and the French, the BNF, is doing quality assurance of the metadata and make sure that this ecosystem that is not just about libraries but about many different stakeholders is stable and runs correctly. I love this model because that was a relevant model for libraries' work. You can say what I do here impacts ecosystems beside the library, beside the university. I create ISNIs. ISNIs can be used in YouTube. ISNIs can be used in Wikipedia. So there is a richness of value that you can do by having quality control and sort of machine learning happening with librarians being the trusted party, doing work for modern libraries. I loved it and I left it. And then I came to Brown, and in the past 3.5 years, I'm working quite intensely with a group of libraries in the Ivies Plus setting. We do collaborative collection development, tech services, resource sharing. And as we're thinking about new models of the future, how do we do collaborative collection development, we got to the same point. We don't have a tool that allows us to actually understand what the other partners in Ivies Plus are doing. It's not just collections, it's weeding, it's how do we do collection lifecycle, how do we do tech services in collaboration. We don't have anything, we don't have an infrastructure right now that does it. You know that vendors are consolidating, so we have lots of movement going on around us. How many vendors are here? Can you raise your hand? Oh, wow, cool. So we were thinking, we can compare Gobi to Oasis. We can compare Casalini to Casalini's. All of this work is not dynamic enough. And in the end of the day, it doesn't touch on the daily work of the selectors. And that's a question that we need to ask ourselves as we go forward. How do we impact the work of the selector, the expert working in the institutions that we're funding, that we love? And as we're going forward about extensive resource sharing deals and figuring out how to be efficient and consolidated in a consortial manner, we want to make sure that we have the infrastructure to support it, because without it, we're actually going to fail once more, trying to do many visionary things without the roads that will lead us to that end goal. So this is it for now about me, if that was really about me. And this is just kind of a little bit about what I think we're doing. And I'm sorry, you know, like I took this picture from Mad Men. And you may saw, I don't know if you're familiar with that scene, when Greg, I think, is asking Joanne to play a tune in front of the neighbor's family, show her abilities. And she goes and she brings the accordion, and there is this kind of French tune that she's singing, she's playing and singing. And I think that this, you know, accordion-like behavior is really approval plans, all this traditional stuff that we're continuing to do. We are basically kind of have mechanisms that kind of breathe air into a perception that we are in correlation with the user needs. We think, you know, like we do this motion in and out. We talk with some faculty members. We talk with some, you know, students that say, we need you to do this now. And then, you know, we create music out of it. What we kind of don't remember is that there needs to be a player that plays the music. So accordion is not running on its own. If we're forgetting that, you know, you need to have a person that actually runs the spiel, then you may end up with a music that you don't want to sing. And in this case, it's definitely not necessarily, you know, the right tune. And I think that as we're moving forward to collaborative collections, the expertise about who's playing the music are going to be even more important than they are right now. So how do we protect that the expertise of the musician to get to the right place is a question that I don't think we are answering. The other thing that we may want to do is to be a fire ant and, you know, like just explore anything we can, eat anything we can get, and work in a data-driven model, right? What is a fire ant? It knows what's going on in the whole hive. You know, if there is something that one ant notices, everybody, the whole colony is aware of it immediately. So, you know, that would be awesome, right? Like to get to a point where we're so clever that we act as nodes. We're like one selector, one expert kind of does something, and the whole colony is aware of what's going on and will, you know, be kind of smart like that. But we also forget that, you know, there are bad things about being a fire ant. So, for example, there is usually a person in the end, or like a fire ant that rules the fire ants. And that's, again, a question about music. So who's playing the music? Are we giving away the music player if we're not thinking smartly how to create infrastructure that will take into account the work of the experts? So this is kind of that big question. And then, you know, another solution, and maybe this goes back to, you know, the ISNI time, is to come up with a hybrid model. So we have automation running, right? We have those, you know, like great things that fire ants do, and the dynamic kind of stuff that we want to know. But then we have the person that writes the ant. And that person knows enough but makes intelligent decisions according to that data that comes in. So this is kind of where I'm at, okay? It's confusing maybe, but I really want to kind of figure out what to do. So what we've tried to do in the past few years is to create a model like that. We worked with a group of experts in different libraries in Ivies Plus, and we had different models. We had POOF, we had WorldCat selection, we had other, you know, models of collaboration that we wanted to explore. And 2.5 years later, we came up with a model that seems to be respectful in this way. A system that will allow us to select with data coming in, looking at the user's behavior, so thinking, how are the collections are going to be used? What is the circulation statistics? Who are the people that share information? And have a dashboard. When you make a decision as a selector, you want to know that there is activity happening here, or you want to know that Hati Trust has this item, or you want to know enough information about nobody's buying this. You better buy it. So I'm not going to get into architecture or the way that this is going to look like or anything, because it won't be relevant. But I think that we still, where we're at right now is thinking we need an investor, right? So I've been chasing vendors all around, thinking, well, how do we make such a thing work? Because at this point we have vendors that sell us software, library management systems, that know all of this stuff. They know who's using our collections. They know what is not being used. That information is part of the kind of what we're signing on to kind of when we're paying the dollars, but it's not transparent to us as the ones that want to move this collaboration forward. And I think that it's a hard one. Vendors say to us, well, we are really interested in doing it with you, but we don't know if it's vendor neutral. So the whole idea is that the selectors will know what's happening in the network, not to diminish returns. It is about buying more of the right stuff and widen the collections in such a way that the Ivies Plus collaboration is going to be significant, not just for Ivies Plus, but significant to the other libraries that use the resource sharing activities that happen in Ivies Plus. So if we have experts, we have 13 experts at Brown buying area studies collections and other things. I want to make sure that the spend is the right one, because they can do it for Ivies Plus and they can do it for other consortia that can use the same mechanism. And then I'm justifying my staff doing this particular expert work, and then you can all enjoy it, right? Because we can actually build collections that cover many more areas, or cover many more, or the breadth of the collections is much higher. So it takes a bit of energy. We had a good meeting just a few weeks ago, a part of recap, Jason, hi. And we're thinking that maybe there is a way to have Mellon funding some of this work. There are, so, when you come to big organizations like Ivies trying to go forward with something, it's always, like we're all not on the same page. In accordions and fire ants, this is just a Boaz term. So recap, though, is different. There is, a collaboration between Columbia, Harvard, Princeton, and New York Public. And they seem to find it an interesting idea. That's great. The thing is that you do need to start somewhere. You start with a group, and then that group expands, and it may be a success beyond that one group. So I don't know if you have enough details by now by what I'm saying. A dashboard for selectors that shows the data about the vendor's activity and the selectors that are choosing the stuff. On the point of order, talking with other systems, and that's kind of the ISNI model. Once we get that running, why are we stopping with the library? Maybe we can provide services to other users that are beside the campus. Maybe we can do metadata differently for the whole collaboration. And then, we'll know who's collaborating with whom. So there is also a communication end to it, right? You want to make sure that selectors can talk with one another, can say, hey, do you want this? Is this like a good thing to get? That communication layer has not been an emphasis in most of our network software. And who knows what are the reasons. In fact, even if you're looking at POOF, at this point, POOF 2, the new iteration of it, has no communication layer. We used to have a way for Cornell and Columbia selectors to say, I'm going to partner with you on this. But people weren't using it, so it kind of went away. Too cool kind of went away, so maybe there is a good reason. But, you know, Folio is thinking, I think, quite strategically about communication, tagging of activities, machine learning, what to do with the data that this whole ecosystem is going to produce. And what does it mean that we're pausing about a decision? What does it mean that we're, you know, going forward with something? All of those kind of moments of reflection are going to become a direction. But if we don't have one place that they're all happening, all those activities happen, then we'll never make strategic decisions out of it. For example, if we kind of look at the collection analysis in any topic right now, we can compare approval profiles, you know, to one another and assume that that means that there is strategic interest on our libraries to go forward with a particular collection. The approval plans have not been reviewed for a long time, right? They're running blindly in most institutions for a long time. So why would we assume that approval plans are better than accordions just playing somebody else's music? If we do collection analysis, we want to look at all activity, all the things we got, no matter what the model is, and then try to re-engineer what is a strategic direction for our libraries, because we are answering requests, we're trying to kind of be dynamic about our collection activities. So we shouldn't stop with looking at one aspect of collection management. We should look at the whole picture. And that infrastructure, we hope, can help somewhat to put those things together, so we can, next time when we make an approval plan, we'll have enough information to know that that's actually a good one, that we can sustain for a while. And if an approval plan is not working out after a while, we'll have a place to reflect the change in the approval plan, which we don't have right now. So this is kind of in short what we're working on. I hope that, you know, every year I'm going to be able to come in and say, oh, we have successfully done phase 1 of, you know, whatever. But it's up in the air. And that's all I had to say today. Thank you. Questions? Quiet. Now we have 2 groups, all the ants. Does it make any sense to anyone, or you think it's like really, you didn't get it? Here.
Again, I just think that you're saying that we want to have these systems so that we can understand what other experts are really to make our decisions based on. Because we have lots of experts everywhere making decisions, and it's help us somehow have them continue to operate as individuals in a larger community. And that's one way. You know, another way is to maybe take it up a notch instead of saying, they're all these experts and they're just going to do what they want to do based on their own team's expertise. But maybe we want to sort of harness that a little bit by saying, well, we need some institutional agreements about, you know, we're going to buy more in this area. And within that area, our experts will have more control, and they're selecting, not just for us, but, you know, for you know, others as well. In some way, this would be beneficial in either of those situations, but I sort of wonder about that sort of greater focus, taking all of the control away from sort of individuals on the ground. I think that's important to see that as well.
Did you hear it, everyone? Is it clear? Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, I agree. It's a complex situation already, right? That kind of, how much control is there on collection management right now? A lot of us, you know, are depending on one committee or on one person or on an approval plan, or, you know, And in many other institutions, there is a question if that's the right direction right now, because we are now in that big network level activity. So if we don't have that, then we're going to get stuck. I think you can have something, an infrastructure does both things. This is kind of also what you're saying. If there is a Uber arrangement, MOU or whatever, then there is a way for the daily work of the selector to work against that Uber plan, right? Or with it, you know. So you can say all of this stuff we know we don't need to worry about. You get this thing that you need to choose from, and it says to you, don't worry about it. Or, you know, if you select it deliberately, you know. But that tension is important to have in one place and not in the memories, because, you know, we'll have MOUs. We'll get to a point, we're going to have, you know, 40 MOUs between, you know, East, West, narrow, you know, like all of those. But then the keepers of those arrangements right now are kind of, you know, just need to imagine it as a daily practice. It's not there. So a placeholder to say, don't worry about it is great. Worry about it because we have only 2 copies. So maybe you should order something, you know, is good. The other end is also open access. You know, there are ways by which systems like that can actually contribute to scholarly communication by funding things together, you know, like, so if we wanted to unlatch books or do, you know, other things, we don't have a way to put the business models in one place now that really can launch initiatives of that scale. So, you know, evolving collection development activities also need to have the infrastructure to support, you know, type of kind of communal support that we don't have. And thank you, that was a great question. Hi.
Hi, Corey Marath from the University of Washington. So, and maybe I didn't fully understand what you're describing, but it sounds to me like a very selector-intensive model.
Okay.
And you know, we did a survey of budget allocation models for a presentation yesterday. And I wouldn't say there was a trend, but there was certainly more the case of a movement away from a lot of selectors to more centralized collection development, rather than having more selectors and having more selectors doing actual collection development. So how do you, in your thinking about what you're describing, how do you reconcile this movement away from having these very collection-focused bibliographer-type librarians who are doing this type of work, having fewer of those around to work in this system that you're describing?
Yeah. So Corey, how many selectors do you have?
Oh, see, we're a bad example. We have, we budget for about 70 subject lines.
Wow.
And we have somewhere, depending on how you count, somewhere between 45 and 50 selectors.
Okay, got it. So good question for you. But also, like, not to avoid it, because that's a serious question that we've been asking, and I think that others are investigating right now. A resistance to this whole idea, serious one, came exactly from there. Why would we now invest in experts doing more work when we moved away and we have approval plans that are doing all of this great stuff? I question the great stuff. I'm not sure if we're doing a great job with the approval plans we have. I also, just to say, let's get there. Some of the work we don't need. It's obvious, right? But we don't need it because we have business arrangements that support the need to avoid it. We have other, we buy one thing for one collaboration. We need to know that you did that, right? So if you have only, if out of 35 selectors, you have 10 that are experts that we pay more for because we can afford it as a network, we want to make sure that they are the best we can get. And we want to have a way for them to shape collections for a network, which we never asked any selectors to do. So this is a new horizon for collection development jobs, that you are not working just for your own, institution. You're actually supporting many other institutions. And if we, so I don't want to give away that option to have expertise that still do that core intellectual work, to be reflected in a network in shaping collections, not just for one institution at a time. So who knows how it's going to end up? We're not going to end up with as many experts in all the networks we have, but we're going to have less. But they will be very effective and very important for us. That's my answer. Hi.
Hi. I wonder whether your proposal is sustainable. Instead, I would offer that we refine and develop our relationships with whatever consortia or multiple consortia that we already have conduct work with, and have things in place and refine those processes and determine how best to entertain using them more effectively, rather than to create an in-house situation which potentially is unstable because you can't guarantee anyone's going to be there for the duration, or to, you're investing in a structure that potentially is artificial, I think. Instead, I would also suggest that I agree with previous speakers about whether we're really investing in subject expertise. And without that, I'm not sure whether you want subject expertise, but whether you want technical expertise. And those kinds of combinations to work with our new systems are increasingly important. So I'm not sure whether it's reworking the collection model or collection strategies, but it's much more internal to the whole library to become more effective in its relationships with its spend, its resources, both human and financial.
Yeah. So and who are you? Sorry.
Oh, I'm Julia Gelfand from Irvine.
Hi, Julie. So I agree with everything you said. And I don't think that having the infrastructure to support expertise in networks is going to contradict efficiency and business modeling and making sure that the other stuff we do is not better justified. It actually will be easier to explain why we have all those other arrangements when we have that forefront of librarians making decisions about the relevancy of the collections that we get. I agree that we don't do well when it comes to the business side. There are many things that we need to review in the way that library work. There are many things we can learn from other ecosystems on the way that they do business. One of the problems that I have with the way we are working now is that we don't think about stakeholders that are not inside our own campuses or inside our own libraries. We need to think what else we do that serves other needs than us. And I think so just in agreement, and I don't think we may need to invest some work in infrastructure on all ends, and this takes an initiative and patience. MOUs change, and approval plans change, and collaborative ones change quite a bit. I think that if we don't have a way to stabilize it somewhere in a system that resonates with the daily work of the selectors, then they're going to go wild. And in a few years, we may have MOUs, and then we'll have all the requested items and all the other things that we need to fill our collections with to accommodate the local needs. And then another collection analysis need will happen, and we'll need to, again, look at the whole stuff that we do as a network, and again, review the MOUs. And that cyclical overhead that we may need to start kind of getting into is going to be very expensive if we don't have a way to put all those things together. But I agree with everything you're saying. Otherwise, this is like, let's do it. Hi.
Hi, I'm Ryan Johnson from Georgetown, and I
Yes.
guess the one piece I don't see in that is how you figure the institutional context into this. Because as someone who's selected it in multiple disciplines in multiple places over the years, the nature of the department I'm selecting for is how I end up applying my expertise, and that's only applicable in that local situation and may not be appropriate for some other school, and I'm not sure how you mesh that context into this broader view, unless we're going back to conspectuses, and then that's just a nightmare. So,
Thank you. Yeah. So, just agreeing again. This is happening, and we are reacting to requests and other local needs. That actually was one of the problems with collaboration with Columbia. When I was still at Cornell, we thought about doing e-resources together. So put one team, and we're going to address that. But the local e-resources collections are local, and the troubleshooting for collections is local. And the faculty, and the whatever needs that are there. So you work in a local context, but you continue and do this. You continue to work in your local context. It doesn't regiment a network level work. It just says to you, this is happening. You need to know, that something else is happening in your network. Doesn't mean that you decide to do, not to do, to go with it, not to go with it. It's a coordinated collection development infrastructure, not a network that sits on top of it and dictates this is what you do, unless you think it's the best thing to do. If you're saying we have an MOU for 4 libraries and we are all getting the same stuff, we want you to know that you're not ordering it. Someone needs to say that somehow to the selector that works in the institution. And if you're locally needing to buy that thing, it's good to know, right? We have an extra copy. What to do with that extra copy? The network now has an extra copy. Maybe we weed extra copies together to one place, and by that save resources and time. Thank you. That's a good question. Hi.
Hi, Michael Honer, University of Winnipeg.
Hi, Michael.
So I have lots of thoughts on this, so stop me anytime.
Okay.
But, so it's debatable how much upfront it seems to be in terms of selection, but we've all talked about shared collection and shared collection development. So somewhere there's the possibility and should be a tool developed. So we could talk about other areas of the life cycle too. Oh, just back to the shared, I have green space data from OCLC for a shared print archive that we're putting together for Western Canadian libraries. I'd just love to do a cluster analysis of that, just to find out, because I think approval plans for us, where budgets are so thin and everything, the money would be quickly spent unless we could actually very, very focused, what actually gets used in our collection, what collection areas get used. So sort of like a conspectus, but based on what actually gets used in our collection. So there's a possibility that way, gathering that data, as you say, sort of a QA model of gathering that stuff up and building that kind of context. On the other side, there's other areas of the life cycle, collection management stuff too. And you talked about disposal, but I'm even looking at replacements quite often too. Again, with the shared print, finding out if it's required to replace, because we're supposed to, we have that in our list of, required items that we're supposed to retain. Having other context, just building in how many uses it's had, how old it is, and bringing in some of that data. Those data points and stuff, I think, would be important, along with, looking at Google Scholar, how many times it was cited, pulling in that information, because I do that all the time to kind of build a case for replacement. Hasn't been used too much, it's used, at least it's not a reason for it to be out the door, but having to figure out, how many copies are held, but whether that means a lot to people. Oh, it's held a lot or not a lot, whether you want to replace it still. Again, how many times it was cited, building in that kind of stuff, pulling that data together.
Sounds like we can partner.
Yeah.
You have great ideas.
Well, I don't know. But
So,
there's-
just to
Yeah.
kind of say, you're right, and this is the name of this tool. It started from pre-ordering online form or WorldCat selection, and it ended up in a certain phase as the collection Lifecycle platform, because our Ivies Plus collection managers thought that it is all about what you were saying. We cannot just emphasize selection. We need to think about, deaccessioning, replacing, missing copies, all those things. I think it ends up now as selection because it is about decision making. No matter what you do and in whatever form, it is about what to do with the chunk of stuff, and I need data to handle that. It can be managed by many different parties, by many different maybe organizational structures. It doesn't need to be just the selectors. It can be the tech services people that just need to know how to enhance a piece, an element in all of our records. So there is a lot of kind of extras that we can get from having it in one place and add other business intelligence into the system. The easier ones are the ones that we are kind of thinking are kind of low-hanging fruit, like stuff that we can get from library management system, stuff that we can get from vendors, but the citations of that, really, that's a great idea. Maybe we bring somebody to kind of help us with that. That's where the vendor, like the vendors and, us we need to partner here. And it is about trust with them that we are here to sustain really ourselves. It is about, us. It's so important for us to tell the right story also to the vendors, explaining we want you to be part of this because it's good for you. And citations will allow us to choose the right things, or maybe Ivies Plus need to choose what others are not selecting because we have a mission to sustain scholarly communication big time. Like there are all those other things you can do when you're thinking about selection and mission and responsibility. So I love what you're saying, and we should talk. Thank you. Okay, are we running out of time? We ran out of time. Thank you so much. It was cool, and I had a great time.